Good evening and welcome to this regular meeting of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth. Your meeting date is Monday, February 9th, 2025. I'm Mayor Todd Kasenberg and I'll call this meeting to order. I ask the clerk to note our starting time for the minutes as 7 p.m. And in fact, it's February 10th. Apparently, I'm a day behind. Need a time machine to move me forward. All right. I extend a warm welcome to councillors, staff, delegations, and observers who participate in this meeting, regardless of whether they are physically in attendance in the council chamber and list room or being connected through web technologies. We begin tonight's meeting with the playing of O Canada. Those in chambers, as able, are invited to stand. I note with a certain degree of appreciation the playing of our national anthem tonight. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe peoples. We wish to recognize the long history of Indigenous peoples in Canada and show our respect to them today. We recognize their stewardship of the land. May we all live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship. Tonight's meeting is being streamed live on the Municipality of North Perth YouTube channel and will be available there after this meeting as an archived video. To those viewing this meeting via the YouTube channel, a warm welcome to you. To those present in the gallery today by attending a public meeting of the Council, you are consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded. Anyone who is invited to speak will be recorded and their voice, image, and comments will form part of the live stream. The chair and or the clerk have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances when deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory, or potentially inappropriate to be published. Attendees are advised that they may be subject to legal action if their actions result in inappropriate and or unacceptable behavior and or comments. Thank you. This time I invite your decorum over the course of the coming meeting. You can see that all of my colleagues are in their chairs in the council chamber in list room. Let us move to item 5 on our agenda pertaining to pecuniary interest. Members of council have full lives with engagement in the community. Sometimes they may find themselves with a potential financial or pecuniary interest in an item at the council table. Provincial legislation mandates councillors to declare this interest and, in so doing, avoid direct involvement in the consideration or voting on the item. I invite all councillors with a perceived pecuniary interest, including those who have already so declared in writing, to verbally advise the chair in public session. Documentation is to be submitted, if not already done, pursuant to council procedures. Councillors may declare now or at any point in the meeting should such interest be recognized. Colleagues, I haven't seen anything in advance. Anyone wishing to make a declaration at this time? I'm not seeing an indication of that. As chair of this meeting, I will manage the flow of proceedings tonight, largely in accord with our agenda and our rules of procedure. Some may be participating remotely by web conference. Should they wish to speak, they may draw the attention of the clerk to this desire using the conferencing technology's text chat function. If technical difficulties arise for remote participants, I will advise and attempt to send some help. Let us now focus on the people's business. Part of that focus is achieved when those in the chamber silence and put away their phones. Regarding item 6 of our agenda, I have a resolution for consideration to approve the agenda as follows. The agenda for tonight's meeting be approved. Can I call for removers? Councillor Anstett, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Richardson. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. We are now at item 7 on our agenda, the so-called consent agenda. Consent items are placed on our agenda because they are believed to be non-contentious, yet they may warrant council's action or recognition. Grouping them expedites our business. However, any councillor wishing to extract an item from the consent agenda for discussion, debate, and individual action may do so. There are 29 items on our consent agenda tonight, including the minutes of our last regular council meeting. Councillors, anything to extract here or any corrections to the minutes that you'd like needed? Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg, and good evening, everyone. 7.6, I would like to pull out and talk about.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Johnston. Anyone else looking to pull something from our agenda? Councillor Roth.
Thanks very much, Mayor Kasenberg, members of council, staff. Item 7.8, I would like to raise for further discussion, as well as item 7.26.
Okay, those are noted. Thank you. Anyone else with extractions to make here? All right, let's turn to our usual process, which is to consider the extracted items first. So, item 7.6, Councillor Johnston, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I can honestly say that until I read this letter, I'd never heard of this kite fighting. But it does sound like if they're cutting using fiberglass coated lines at heights of more than 3,000 feet, it's not stuff that we need left in our fields. It's enough. It's bad enough as it is, and if we have stuff that's could be dangerous to livestock. So my only question was: is this something that Perth County Council could do that would cover the whole county instead of the 4 lower tiers doing it? That's I didn't know if that's something that's doable at the county level and would save the lower tiers. I don't know. That's my question. I would like to support it as North Perth, but if it would be simpler to do it as a county level, I would support it at the county level as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnston. I think there's a later item in the agenda that demonstrates that the county did receive the information and extract that in its own consent agenda for the purposes of offering commentary.
7.25.
Yes, thank you. Item 7.25. And in this, the county suggested the lower tiers investigate the increased activities of this kite fighting. That was where the county stood. The county believes it's certainly more within the sort of bylaw enforcement areas of lower tier municipalities. I think that's the way to interpret it. Did you want to?
And I think we should look at how we can enforce it, ban it, whatever we need to do to protect our crop and our animals.
So resolution to direct staff to bring forward a report on how we might add what's the term I'm looking for? Add violation of property. Maybe we shouldn't go that deep. Maybe we should let staff bring back a report that essentially tells us the implications of this behavior and recommends a course of action for this council intending to prohibit or deter this. Does that sound right? All right, so we'll call that moved by Councillor Johnston, seconded by Councillor Nordum. It appears. Any discussion or debate on this? Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks, Mayor Todd. I just recall item the resolution or the letter from the Perth County Federation of Agriculture does suggest a bylaw which the town of Oakville did adopt to prohibit kite fighting. So that perhaps, well, I'm sure staff would be aware of that when they do the research and so on. But I think that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you for pointing that out. Any discussion or debate on this further? All right, we kind of have a resolution. If you're ready to trigger a vote, let's do that. And that is carried. Thank you, Councillor Johnston, for that one. Let's turn to Councillor Rothwell next, item 7.8.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd, members of council. Item 7.8 deals with the correspondence from List of Wingham Hospitals Alliance regarding physician recruitment and housing. And this is very important work and a suggestion, a request of $50,000 annually from the municipality of North Perth to subsidize rent for their residents and or pay the lease cost if the unit is empty at any point. So my understanding is, and perhaps the deputy mayor, who I believe is on the committee, could perhaps inform us more, but I think this is an item that I would like perhaps directed for our discussion, even though we've adopted or approved our budget and adopted the bylaw. I think it's important that we potentially look at this as a bylaw amendment or a budget amendment to look at the possibilities of what this could mean here, and if it's not specific dollars, if it's land or something to help create housing which is being requested for up to 4 residents per year.
Thank you, Councillor Rothwell. Deputy Mayor Callum, I don't know if you've been involved in the discussions at the Physician Recruitment Committee, but if you'd like to weigh in, you're welcome to.
Yes, through you, Mayor Kiesenberg, and to Councillor Rothwell. No, it has not come to the committee. This was a separate meeting of their own. It will be coming to us. So this is an additional $50,000 above what we already providing for doctor recruitment. They're asking for this. It's tough to get landowners, to lease out to us on, okay, we need it for this month, or we need it for this week, or whatever. So this is additional. So I do support this. I think we should consider this as a council moving forward, and looking for anyone else to weigh in on it. But it has not yet come back to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you for the information. Anyone else have comments about this? My preferred action would be to refer this to staff, actually, and ask staff to do some work on this. We are in the midst of what is essentially an arms race around physicians across Ontario, and municipalities are jumping in with all kinds of incentives and actions to try to improve physician recruitment, constantly upping the ante. And I do have my concerns about that behavior. I think that nobody really wins. I read a pretty fascinating story recently about the extravagant extent of a community in Nova Scotia. They were working on to bring doctors to their community and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in various types of incentives to bring doctors here. So I think we need some staff insight and some strategic initiatives time on this. If council is okay with us asking staff or directing staff to do that, I think that would be quite wise.
I'm willing to make that motion.
So direct staff to prepare a report in response to the letter from the Listowel Wingham Hospital Alliance with regards to physician and resident incentives. I think that's sort of what it says. Does that sound right to you? All right, anyone wishing to second that? Deputy Mayor Kellum, thank you. Any discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, if the clerks are ready, let's have that vote. We seem to be, there it is. All right, and that is carried. Thank you. And Councillor Rothwell, back to you for 7.26.
Thanks, Todd. Community Living North Perth press release regarding severe funding shortfalls impacting people with developmental disabilities. This letter or press release, starting on page 125, there's 4 pages there of important information for consideration within our community. And this is not just Community Living North Perth that's raising this issue of concern. This is across Ontario, and the executive director, Jennifer Croft, has raised this issue. I know anyone that's driven by Community Living's office knows the billboard display, which is trying to educate public, or at least raise awareness of the funding shortfall that they've seen, where since 1993 there's only been a 7% increase in their budgets from the province, whereas they're over 60% increase since 1993 is just to keep pace with where they were back then. I think it's important for this municipality to show support for Community Living North Perth. We do understand their circumstance, and especially in light of their campaign to bring them home in terms of that new campaign, which was just launched for individual dwelling units for some of the people that are within their wait list. I do know from conversations with fellow councillors that were at the Realtor Municipal Association meeting in February that, and I saw a press release, or at least information, that Community Living did have discussions with uh, provincial officials regarding this issue. And I do understand that things take time to resolve, but patience starts to wear thin when you realize it's been since 1993 that they've been withstanding this significant reduction in operations. So whatever we can do is, and I'd be willing to have a resolution for consideration at this council table to at least express support for community living, certainly within North Perth, but across Ontario, and have that resolution support and a request for the province to take action to increase the funding for community living organizations to an appropriate level for this important part of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rothwell. I can add a little bit of color, perhaps, to the information with regards to our meeting. CEO Snell and I attended a meeting with community living officials, with Mr. Parsa, who is the Minister of Children and Community and Social Services in the government, which is lapsed now, and with the election period. And certainly, I think points that were made at the table were powerful ones, that there is a deficit problem with regards to management of wait lists, and of course, even population alone, growth of population added on top of inflation has had significant compounding effects in terms of how the money is being used in the system for those who need these sorts of services. So we certainly took the opportunity to address it with the minister. The minister was kind and interested the local project certainly, and asked for more information on the Bring Them Home campaign, which was encouraging. But certainly, the problem is pretty substantial. And having had conversations with Ms. Croft and her colleagues, we do have a number of people who are affected in our community who are struggling to be appropriately housed and supported in that housing. So, there are some significant issues. Um, I wanted council to know that we'd had that meeting and that had that discussion with the previous ministry essentially, and so I think it's a good idea that if you'd like a resolution that sort of provides council support for taking actions that have been recommended in this media release, I think that's probably the approach to structuring a resolution.
Yeah, I'm certainly willing to make that resolution to encourage and support the province to undertake the recommendations that are outlined in the press release by the Community Living North Perth and other community living organizations in Ontario. Thank you.
Sounds right. So moved by Councillor Rothwell, seconded by Councillor Richardson. Thank you. Any discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, if the clerks are generally with us, let's have a vote.
Mayor Todd, I'm in support of the resolution. I'm restarting my computer while it's restarting itself.
Councillor Rothwell has recorded a manual in favor vote. And with that, we have unanimity of this council on that matter to send a letter that endorses both the information and the requests or calls to action in that document. All right, that gets us to the big consent agenda. I have a resolution for consideration as follows: the consent items 7.1 to 7.29 be received for information, and the minutes of the January 6, 2025 regular council meeting be adopted. Can I call for a mover on this? Councillor Andreessen, thank you. Councillor Blazek will be our seconder, thank you. Any discussion or debate on this resolution? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And the annual vote is recorded by Councillor Rothwell. And with that, that is carried. Thank you. Let's move to item 8. Tonight, we do not have any delegations to council that are scheduled, nor do we have any public meetings that warrant a recess from council. That brings us to item 9 on our agenda. First, let us consider a report from the Development and Protective Services Department under item 9.1 of our agenda. As item 9.1.1, the County of Perth brings forward an update presentation on the state of matters related to the county's planning department, including some insight into the new official plan that is awaiting provincial endorsement, and insights into housing density and affordability, and a few local planning files of interest. With us tonight, we have Moira Davidson, the county's senior policy planner. It's a mouthful. Who is graciously with us to provide us this update. So, Ms. Davidson, the floor is yours.
Thank you, everyone, for having me here tonight. As eloquently put by the mayor, I am here to give a quick update from county planning on kind of what we have accomplished in the past year, as well as give an update on some items of interest that your council decided on related to wind, solar, and as well as some housing intensification. So I'll go to the next slide. Just a quick agenda for what we're going to be discussing today. So again, there is the official plan update that I'll be providing you, housing intensification. One item I forgot to mention is that there was a question regarding a certain official plan amendment as to whether it was brought into the 2024 county official plan. So I have some slides on that. And then finally going through a wind and solar review. So to start this off, I wanted to provide a quick project timeline, kind of where we've been and where we're going. So last time that you were spoken to regarding the county official plan was not by myself, it was by the previous senior policy planner in January of 2024. Since then, we have completed phase 4, phase 5, and phase 6, and we're now in phase 7 of the official plan approval process. So the next slide summarizes the phases that have happened since, and then also mentions the key milestones and deliverables that have happened. The phase 4 was essentially the release of the first draft official plan. That was when you yourselves were spoken to in detail about what the key changes were. So local council meetings were held with each of the local municipalities, and then local open houses were also held at each of the local municipalities as well. Following this, there was a number of items of concern or key themes that came out of those levels of consultation with yourselves as well as members of the community, which resulted in a restructuring of how the county was going to deliver this official plan. It resulted in the delivery of more or the need for more consultation as well as more information be provided in different methods so that the community had a better understanding of what was being undertaken, what changes were being made, and kind of what a new official plan meant to them. So this included release of a new FAQ. It also resulted in a release of a consultation strategy, a revised consultation strategy, as well as a consultation summary and the key changes that needed to be made to the official plan to meet the needs and desires of the community. In phase 5, so summer 2024, we saw a revised official plan based on all this feedback we heard. It then was received by county council, in which point they directed us to proceed with another round of consultation. That next round of consultation included a mail out to 23,000 properties across the county to inform the community of what was ongoing, how they could get involved, the changes that were being made. It also resulted in a release of a interactive mapping system where people could see what their existing official plan designation was from the 1999 official plan to what the 2024 official plan was proposing. There was also open houses held, 2 in total, both attempted to be in centralized locations to the entire county. And in addition to that, we held in-person community site-specific local meetings. So planners were in the offices, each member municipal office, for site-specific property owner meetings, and we were able to meet with 40 different community members and go through site-specific matters that they had concerns about at that point. Following that round of consultation was when we were able to complete the final draft of the official plan. So in that time, there was also changes to provincial policy. So we went through and made amendments to the official plan based on that. And then the final official plan was released. At that point, we then held a statutory public meeting as required under the Planning Act, and following county council's review of that information and impact or input, from members of the public, they voted to endorse the official plan and send that forward to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing as the final approval authority. So that is where we stand today. In November 2024, the 2024 county official plan was sent to the province. We have received confirmation of a complete submission. We're anticipating to receive approval from them in December 2025, approximately. We're in constant communication with the province and our contacts there about changes that they would like to see or about information they'd like to gather to understand the process better. But at this point, we're kind of in a waiting period until they give us that final approval. And then once that final approval from the province happens, it's when a housekeeping amendment to the 2024 official plan will occur. So we recognize that the plan we submitted was just one moment in time, and all these other developments and maybe different policy changes have happened since then, excuse me. So we're looking to then update it one more time to make sure we have everything, consolidated, considered, and can move forward with this official plan that kind of considers everything that the community needs, the province wants, and hopefully it's a happy medium. Following that point forward, now that we have a new county official plan, every 5 years there's a review of the official plan. So we recognize that in there being such a time frame between when the original official plan was created and this one, it is quite new policy across the county and being used across the county. So we recognize that it might take time to adjust to these new policies, as well as consider whether these policies work for our rural and urban communities, and if tweaks need to be made, that's when a 5-year review can come in and make those edits once we're aware of what the impacts are. Next slide. So to provide an overview of what guided the official plan, there's these three key documents, that I've indicated on the slide here, as well as an overview of the engagement that we've undertaken to date. The first policy guiding document is the Policy Directions Report, which identified the key issues and proposed policies related to built and natural environment, as well as housing and employment potentials. And that report was completed in 2020. And then there was also the undertaking of the Perth Natural Heritage System Study. So this was undertaken originally in 2018 and then updated again in 2020 when new aerial imagery was released. And it reviews and evaluates the changes in ecological systems across the county and how policies within the official plan can look to protect these important systems. And finally, there's the comprehensive review that was undertaken and finalized in 2023. And this provides the population and employment projections for a 30-year horizon across the county. Summarizing those documents, we can then look forward to the engagements that was undertaken. So various open houses and council meetings, individual postcards being sent out, and emails and phone calls. There's various methods that we use to try and engage the community and make them aware of what's happening, get their feedback, and try to provide a plan that works best for them. We are also very fortunate to have regular meetings with all of our local municipal staff, and they were able to inform us of kind of the key themes and trends that were being talked about in their own communities, and we did our best efforts to include those in the official plan. Next slide. So the key kind of themes that I was asked to speak about today are what properties might be impacted by this official plan. And I guess one of the key items of concern that was brought up during our first round of engagement on the first draft of the official plan was the natural environment policies. So the natural environment policies, they include and encapsulate protection of natural environment features, source water protection, natural hazards, energy sources, aggregates, minerals, as well as petroleum resources. And kind of all of these are lumped into, or not lumped, they're all included under protection for these natural features that assist us in living the lives we do today. We have requested that, to include these environmental protections. We followed the requirements of the provincial policy statement, now known as the provincial planning statement, as well as conservation authority policies. And through that, we were able to determine kind of a new system that should be applied across the county level. So there was a policy update in 2004, that required the natural environment features to now become a natural environment system, recognizing that there's connecting features that animals travel between. There's larger, broader habitats for these animals, or waste or water systems, are more broader than originally thought. This resulted in the natural environment system now becoming a system rather than individual features in and of themselves. In addition to that, we also recognize that the mapping that was done of our natural environment system was done in 1985. And naturally, there's natural forest progression and other growth of features that has resulted in an increase in the amount that there is today. Further, there's also different technologies that exist now, GIS technologies, than ones that were existing in 1985. And then through consideration of all of this, we were able to determine that there would be an increase in approximately 0.7% of land to be additionally designated as natural environment. Next slide. The second summary I wanted to provide you is regarding the settlement area expansion. This was a result of the county-wide comprehensive review, as well as a regional market approach, which I'll touch on the next slide. But the project team was fortunate enough to be able to have kind of continuous conversations with staff throughout this process, which we originally started in 2021 on where the best places for our local municipalities to grow were. So essentially, the first step was the comprehensive review determined that there's going to be a population forecast of 60,000, or just over 60,000 people, and a job increase to 28,000 by 2046. In recognizing this growth, they determined that approximately 90% of this is required to happen in urban areas. So, with that, and considering the amount of land that currently was available in our settlement areas, as well as kind of vacant land studies, we determined that there was a need for 407 additional hectares. Through this, through the 407 hectares, we determined that North Perth itself requires 241 hectares of residential, commercial, and institutional, and then 146 hectares of long-term employment growth. Next slide. So considering the amount of land that was required, a regional market approach was taken to determine where our urban areas should grow. At the time of completion, the regional market approach was used because the policy statement, the planning policy statement at the time, directed that this approach be taken. It identifies that the regional market area is the entirety of Perth County. However, we also recognize that it's best to focus on service settlement areas. So with collaboration from staff, we reviewed urban and fringe, which would be like directly adjacent to the previous settlement area boundary, vacant and underutilized lands. And then we also undertook a evaluation of these lands plus additional lands, considering how much land is needed based on the growth of each urban area, what is the infrastructure availability and capacity in those areas, how easily will it be to extend those services, then logical phased progression. We also considered NDS compliance, as well as minimal impact to the agricultural system, and then further where impact is not possible or avoidance is not possible, then minimized and mitigated impact to that system. First off, we also did originally consider an expansion to our hamlet and village areas, simply through rounding out or adding one lot here or there. However, when we took that approach and applied the regional market view from it, we realized we'd be adding an additional 22 hectares into unserviced settlement area, which wasn't compliant and supported by provincial policy. So that 22 hectares eventually got removed after conversations with the province. Now, if you look on the screen, there are maps, and they indicate the areas that were considered for growth, and then you'll see the final areas that ended up being added to the settlement areas. In the left-hand side, the hatching is the areas considered for growth, and you'll see that the majority of them were actually brought in. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see Atwood there. The areas outlined in black were the lands considered for expansion, and then you'll see that more lands were actually brought in. This was a direct result from conversations with the province, where in the original allocation of lands, we did it based off of what was directed by staff, what staff had suggested was feasible or viable or how much land you had wanted. Following discussions with the province, we were advised that we couldn't withhold lands identified by the comprehensive review, and we were required to allocate all of them. At that point is when we considered logical phase progression of development, considered infrastructure availability, and ended up with the planned settlement area expansions that you see before you. Next slide. So when considering all this growth that we're expecting, as well as trying to limit the amount of additional settlement area expansions we need in future official plan reviews, we have focused a lot of the policies on accommodating growth through intensification. So if you look on the screen, you'll see kind of key policies that we've included in the county official plan. Looking forward to the service settlement areas, we've included minimum targets of density per hectare. We've included there's requirements for new residential development to be in forms other than singles and semi-detached, intensification targets, affordable targets as well, and then also encouraging but not requiring sympathetic design to intensification and infill. There's also outside of settlement areas, or I guess across any property, as a right density for 3 units per property, in line with the recent provincial policy changes that permit that. So we have ensured that our policies align with that provincial reasoning, and then also encouraging mixed use spaces for complete communities. And this is seen kind of across our urban areas, is trying to diversify, the amount of uses we have. So we're not restricting who can live where and the access of services that each community and neighborhood has. On the right-hand side there, you'll see local zoning bylaw implementation. So now that the official plan is done, we will be looking to update the zoning bylaw so that it complies with and aligns with the official plan. You will be hearing from me about that specifically at your next council meeting and the one following. But for now, in summary of kind of how that works and how we're going to be accommodating growth through intensification in the zoning bylaws, we'll be looking at specific transitional policies related to intensification and infill. So how does the step-down effect work, where we're maybe having some higher heights or more stories of a building and transitioning from maybe a higher density to a lower density? How does that transition work? And there's also consideration for ambitious as of right density permissions across all zones. In considering kind of these approaches and these policies, we've looked at what's happening across the province, what's happening across Canada, in order to build kind of better and more housing. And these are the approaches that we've taken. The alignment of zoning provisions also with standardized of modular homes and additional residential units. So we recognize there's many blueprints you can buy or modular home communities you can buy from, that if you would like to have an additional dwelling unit on your property, you can. But there could be some restrictions in the current zoning bylaw that aren't as open to that type of intensification as they could be. And considering the community improvement plan that North Perth has and the encouragement that they have for additional dwelling units, we think it's best to try and align the zoning so it's as easy as possible for that infill and intensification to happen. And then finally, some easy to read policies in a table format so that if you're looking at a zoning bylaw, it doesn't put you to sleep. It's very easy to understand and allows you to kind of get what you need from it. You're just looking at a table, you say, yep, this is what my zone is, this is what I'm allowed to do, and not having to have a planning background and able to understand a zoning bylaw. Next slide. So that summarizes kind of what we're doing for intensification, and it somewhat relates to this next slide here. There was a item of concern raised for this specific property in question, and it's a property that was initially developed in the 1960s, and then it, as a provincial residential facility, and then it was then closed in 1998. So I'm just going to progress through kind of what the official plan amendments we've seen are and how it's been brought forward into the 2024 official plan. So in February 2024, OPA 5 amended the 1999 official plan to permit the above listed site specific uses. That's on the very left hand side of the screen. Then we saw OPA 16 in August 2001, and this further modified the permitted uses, and this is also the official plan amendment that triggered a zoning bylaw amendment to align the zoning bylaw with the permissions of the official plan. Next slide. And finally, the final OPA that was received and approved for the property is OPA 110, which is on the left-hand side of the screen. This is from August 2011. It establishes the uses currently permitted on the property, and this is under Special Policy Area 31 in the current official plan. So it should be noted that OPA 110 identified requirements for a zoning bylaw amendment to permit the OPA permitted uses, which we believe is the reasoning to why the current North Perth zoning, does not align with the current official plan, because the zoning bylaw still needs to be updated to align with that official plan amendment from 2011. So speaking to what currently exists in the official plan, that is Special Policy Area 31. It's currently in the 1999 County of Perth official plan, which you can review for yourselves if you'd like. And the permissions and eligible uses of which have been carried forward, and they are included directly in Section 3.5.6B of the 2024 County official plan. Next slide. And the final item of discussion I wanted to talk to you about is actions and options for wind and solar. So there was some identifying concern for wind and solar, so the county did take that into consideration in creating the 2024 official plan. We did have a report completed by WSP during that process, and they concluded that no official plan policy change was warranted. Now, we also undertook a comparator assessment to determine what other municipalities are doing, what other counties are doing, and we did only find one comparator that prohibits large-scale wind turbines. However, in recognizing the importance of agricultural use and kind of the uniqueness of agricultural use in Perth County, we did go ahead and add some limiting factors to those. I will say we weren't able to completely prohibit it because of sections of the PPS that specifically say that planning authorities should provide opportunities for the development of energy supply, including energy storage systems, renewable energy systems, and our local policies do have to be consistent with this PPS 2024. So our solution, we added some clarifying factors into the 2024 official plan, and subject to the minister approving these, we believe this is a good step forward. So we've added clarifications that renewable energy systems and alternative energy systems are permitted. However, they can only be permitted for personal use, and large-scale wind energy systems are not permitted. We've also clarified that ground-mounted infrastructure and equipment related to energy systems shall not negatively impact the productivity of prime agricultural land. So we believe that we've done our requirement by the province to address and consider the development of energy systems. We've also recognized the importance of these systems for farmers who may have their own personal wind turbine on their property, or windmill on their property, smaller scale, and then anything large scale we've proposed being not permitted. And we just await the province's approval of that policy. And I'd be happy to bring back a kind of statement or memo, or just to inform you of kind of what their final decision on that was. And then through the zoning bylaw, something that can be considered is rather than not include or not prohibit it. We suggest that we don't include it as a permitted use in any zone, but we provide a definition of what we consider to be energy systems. That allows for anyone coming in for an application. They're very clear on what they're providing. They're not able to argue that their wind turbine is a piece of art, or I don't know what it would be, but because the use is specifically defined, it's able to clearly be required to have some type of application. So the definition is provided, then it's not permitted as a use. It would require that landowner or whoever wants to build that to then apply for a permit. And during that permit stage is when we'd be able to do the required studies or reach out to, or have them, reach out to the different members of uh, either federal or provincial and get those approvals, since that is how kind of they were able to develop and exist in past. Next slide. That was long-winded and detailed, so I appreciate you staying with me, but I'm happy to answer any questions on kind of the full scale of themes and items covered.
Thank you, Ms. Davidson. I took particular note with Rye Amusement, the approach to wind turbines. It remains to be tested whether the province is going to buy into the approach that you've apparently suggested in the official plan. But interesting approach. Gutsy.
Through yourself, I have determined that this approach was taken by I want to say Frontenac. They have this policy in their official plan. Their official plan is approved by the province. Now, theirs is a bit older than ours, so whether the same people at the province are approving ours that we're approving Frontenac's, I'm not sure, but I'm hopeful that that consideration can be granted there.
Did we remain generally silent about battery energy storage systems?
Through yourself, battery energy storage systems are included in that terminology. It's considered an on-farm diversified use in the provincial planning statement. So we've done our best through that statement that says ground-mounted infrastructure and equipment shall not negatively impact the productivity of prime agricultural land. So we're hoping that that statement there allows due process to require studies and have those types of applications considered by council and yourselves.
Fair enough. Thanks. I think that's it for me. I've been deeply immersed in this for 6 years, so I'm feeling good. And Ms. Davidson is before a happier mayor now. At county council, she took quite a grilling the day that we saw that plan, for which I'm still offering my sympathies. Colleagues, questions, comments? Councillor Rothwell, you must have something.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd, and through you. Thanks, Moira, for your presentation. I really appreciate the presentation tonight. I do note on the slide on our the project timeline, the last time this council received a presentation from the client department was just almost 13 months ago. And I just encourage the planning department to understand that by my math, when I look at the numbers of projected on the slide dealing with countywide settlement area expansion allocation, North Perth is looking at accommodating almost 97% of both the residential as well as the employment lands. And again, those are my quick math. We're looking at 233 hectares of the required 241 and 141 hectares of the required 146 hectares throughout the entire county. Almost 97% of both those residential and employment lands are going to be here in North Perth. So I would hope that this council agrees with me that the planning department perhaps needs to understand that this council needs to be informed even on a more regular basis, perhaps. I mean, if you want to inform all four municipalities, that's important. But I think it's important, especially for this council, to understand what we need to be doing as a local municipal council when we're considering applications, which we're going to see the majority of, almost all of them, that we have to be in lockstep and understanding about where growth and allocation is going to happen. And frankly, in my opinion, this council was not lockstep in with the planning department exactly what lands where were going to be expanded, both in Atwood and Listowel. I am thankful that I and some members of this council did have the opportunity to go to the public sessions, but until that last session that we had from the planning department in January of 2024, this council was not at the same table in terms of, yes, our staff was there, but this entire council was not fully aware of exactly where the growth and development plans were going to occur. So I want to be positive in this and encourage the planning department to recognize that we need to have further conversation. And I'm glad to hear that you've said that you're coming forward to look at the zoning bylaw and updates on that. So I think it's crucial that we get moving forward on that. I am concerned, I'll say in my opinion, that the projected time frame for approval of December of 2025 is, and I know these things take time, it was my career. So I certainly understand things take time, but we have to understand this council, in our community, we have a housing crisis. And we have lands that we as a municipality have said that we are looking at forward at developing for residential development and complete communities and so on. If we have to wait another year before we really get going, that is of no benefit, frankly, to our community that is looking for that development now. And it makes me wonder as to whether or not, as we've spoke with CA Snell about before, for some of our lands, perhaps we need to do an official plan amendment like some of our other development developers have done within our community, and pre go forward without the approval of the county official plan, use the all of the documentation that allows for our growth and development to occur prior to the approval of the county official plan by the province. I'm concerned about that because we have waited and waited and waited. So I understand it's not the planning department's sole responsibility for these delays because of the province and the changing policies, at least 3 times I'm aware of. Nevertheless, we have a lot of work to do within our community, and we have people that are waiting for us to be able to come through with those developments. And it's not just on privately held lands that I'm talking about, although they are certainly part of the equation. It's a significant amount of land, all of which is subject to the county official plan, where we're looking at growth and development on the west development lands, which we're going to be talking about in our council agenda here this evening. So I'll just encourage and support, if there is support from this council, to request ongoing dialogue and discussion with the planning department, especially with this North Perth Council, regarding all issues of growth and development within this community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Rothwell. I think sometimes it's hard to know how to move an agenda forward, and certainly having been involved in the official plan for 6+ years now, there were times certainly where um, uh, a smaller committee of elected officials, the mayors of the 4 lower-tier communities and the warden, made decisions that needed to be made for the sake of advancing the speed of the process. And I can appreciate that at times that can feel really frustrating in the context of this council's input and interests. But certainly, I was at the table and was supportive of efforts to move it along, in part because of the very point you made at the end of our discussion. I can tell you, and just on reflection, hindsight is 2020, right? In early 2019, I sat down with CAO Snell and others and said maybe we should think about an official plan amendment for the Bidding Street lands and bring it into the boundary of Listowel. And we hemmed and hawed about whether we wanted to take that approach because we felt the official plan was was going to give birth soon enough, and should our taxpayers pay for that, right? And here we are 6 years later. Hindsight can be 2020. You know, I can look back and say that was a mistake, perhaps that we made all those years ago in not proceeding. But I want to sort of assure and sensitize to the notion that the four mayors and the warden were very actively involved with staff through the whole of the process. And as staff were making decisions which ultimately could have slowed the process down, the mayors made decisions to say, no, let's not put that in our way. And I appreciate that sometimes that meant that you weren't being consulted as at this council level, as a whole of council, but we were certainly trying to get something done. And the fact, I mean, you know, I can look back and say, it took us 6 bloody years to get here. That's a long time in terms of a political agenda for an important document, and you know, there are all kinds of ifs and maybes about that. I've had to learn patience, and I suspect some of my colleagues who are business people have also had to learn patience about the speed with which some things move. And this one would have been slower still. We would still be talking about the draft of the official plan if the mayors who were part of the steering committee with the CAOs hadn't said, we're going to have to skip that step, or we're going to have to move past that step. So there's some apology for the fact that I essentially wound up being the eyes and ears of North Perth in this process, including related to land allocation. But at the same time, we were trying to get this done, and the fact that it took us 6 years anyway is still astonishing to me, in all honesty. Um, so point made. I think we need to be consulted well, but I tried to represent as best I could the interests of North Perth and North Perth Council, and that regional market. That topic, the regional market, was an enormous debate and number of meetings, and CAO Snell can nod his head to agree to that. We spent a lot of time thinking about how we deal with that, right? We were very concerned, and sorry, I'm on a little bit of a tirade here, but we were very concerned about the implications of allocating all of that land in North Perth and the impacts on farmers. And we were very concerned about that, and worked to the extent we could across the county as lower tier mayors to figure out, can we smooth this out a little bit? Can we allocate a little bit to you and a little bit to you, so that we would have a more balanced strategy, because we know that we have prime farmland here and that it's the heart of what we do. And so, you know, there were a lot of issues that sort of emerged over the course of the last 6 years that I can honestly say that the hair on my head is a lot grayer because of the work of the official plan in this county. But we did get something that I think we can be proud of, and that largely represents some efficiency. I appreciate, you know, not always hearing what we're doing, but it reflects efficiency and progress. And you know, some of those identified items that Ms. Davidson showed on the slide about some of the stronger policy around density, around affordability, those are all important wins for us, I think, and I hope that my colleagues will agree with that. So, sorry, my little rant for the night. Um, Anyone else with comments or questions for Ms. Davidson? She's at our disposal. She's a wonderful planner, and she led the end of this process so ably. It was amazing. So should have put up with me grilling her. Anyone else? All right.
Thanks very much, Todd. And again, thanks for the comments there. And just a question. So again, my understanding in the public consultation, or at least the consideration for for the adoption of the county official plan, is that at least whether I picked it up differently or the information I had wasn't correct, but was the owner of the property of Eden Grove, were they in support of the uh, the policies that are in the adopted plan, or had they requested that their amendment, which we haven't dealt with further, which wanted significantly more than what we see here. Did they expect that that was going to be included, or were they satisfied with what uh, is in the adopted plan, which is section 3.5.6b?
Uh,
Because as I recall, they had requested significantly more in terms of residential dwelling types and so on beyond what's in this document.
Through the mayor, we did correspond with the landowners of that property. They were pleased to see that the same policies of the official plan were brought over. However, they did want us to include um, the permissions also of the zoning bylaw. Now, because they had an active application in with yourselves, we didn't feel it was appropriate to circumvent that active application and that process. And further, because this official plan, OPA 110, excuse me, is newer than the zoning bylaw amendment. We had gone forward with placing that most recent amendment in the 2024 official plan, and had requested that they either uh, choose to withdraw their application or continue on with it. The details of which I'm not familiar with, it'd be a better question for the development planner who's managing that application. But that's kind of the summary of where we got to and why we added that policy there.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the disconnect there. We'll look forward to hearing what that answer is because, as I recall, this council considered the made recommendations based on the consideration by the applicant and planning staff, Nathan, and it was at the county, and I think it was deferred, is the last I understood. But as to whether or not it's been, perhaps we can just request uh, Planner Garland to give this council an update just in terms of that. But again, if the property owner is satisfied with respect to 3.5.6b, that is fine enough for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Rothwell. Anyone else with questions or comments? Planning and drains, the hardest things we do from a technical perspective. CAO now.
Thank you, Mayor Council. I think I could probably answer Council Rothwell's question. I just quickly have to locate it. But I do have an update from Planner Garland on that property recently. So, so yes, the application is basically deferred at this time, waiting um, information back from the applicant, mostly surrounding environmental and servicing concerns and some concerns brought forward by provincial agencies.
I'll offer slight additional commentary because I'm somewhat aware of this. Certainly, one of the things that can happen and may have happened in this case, as I understand it from one of the proponents, is that they had submitted a number of environmental studies and information, and the Ministry of the Environment, I believe, sat on the information for almost a year. And then they got a note back, as I understand it, that indicated that the application was incomplete, which is of concern and certainly warrants a process change if that is an accurate reflection of what happened on the part of the ministry to actually triage these applications when they come through the door and say, oh, is there something missing? Um, so there's a little bit of concern about the environmental process that's been undertaken, as explained to me by the proponent. Of course, everything has different stories and angles, but that's my understanding of current status there. All right. Anyone else with questions or comments? Ms. Davidson, thank you for coming. We appreciate your time and
Thank you
the
for
work
having
that
me.
you've done. All right. Let's bring up another friendly face. Mr. Newell, you're up for a few shots here. We have three reports from the Facilities Department under item 9.2 of our agenda. As item 9.2.1, Council is presented with an informational report about the hours of public availability for the walking track at the Steve Kerr Memorial Complex. Mr. Newell is standing in the slot here. He's going to he look like a goalie. I don't know. That's interesting. Um, you're going to tell us what our current platform is and what we should do about that, Mr. Newell.
Right. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. With regards to our walking track at Steve Kerr, it's a very well-used amenity that we offer to the community. There has been some confusion around the hours of operation, and sometimes we've heard that, oh, that's great, they've increased the hours of operation, when really it wasn't strategic that way. It was that it was the change of season that made it so that we had staff available in our facility to accommodate the walking track hours. So in the fall and winter months, when hockey season takes up a lot of our ice time, we're open for a lot more hours during that time period in the winter months because we have staff in place looking after rentals. And so what happens is we will have a schedule that is from 8 till 6 for people to use, but oftentimes staff are around till 11:30 at night. And so there is a benefit for people that could use it beyond that 6 o'clock time. We don't promote it that way because we can guarantee that we'll be there till 6, but oftentimes, basically Monday through Thursday, the staff are there and people could use it up till 9 or 10 o'clock and it's not a problem. The only time there would be a challenge for people is when there are games that require admission. So typically, like a junior B game, where the track is off limits. It's on limits for spectators that have paid, but people would have to pay if they wanted to use the walking track during a ticketed event. In the summer months, all of our staff are out looking after parks and our open spaces and trails. And so we have limited hours in the summer months. So in the spring and fall, so that would be the April and September, were Mondays and Fridays from 8 till 1, so morning time. And then during the summer, it's Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 8 till 1. And that coincides with staff that are in the building and cleaning. So that's basically the summary of where we're at with it. There's no real cost associated with our current operation of the walking track. It doesn't generate revenue for us as such. It's a healthy benefit to members of our community and visitors. And if we did want to increase the hours of operation outside of that, we would need to look at bringing on additional staff in order to do that, which would be a cost to the municipality. So I just wanted to provide some clarity with this report and answer any questions that people may have.
Thank you, Mr. Newell. Colleagues, questions or first comments on this matter? Councillor Andreessen.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Kasenberg, and thank you to Mr. Newell for your report. I know that our track at the Steve Kerr Memorial Complex is very, very well used and appreciated, and certainly walking is a very safe activity that families can participate in, our seniors participate in, and it's well used. I'm wondering if, well, I guess I have one question to go with my comment. I really appreciate the hours here. I think the hours are right on, and I wouldn't want to add staff at all to extend the hours. But I'm just wondering if there's a way to be a bit more transparent around the ability to walk Mondays to Thursdays when there is staff there because of hockey. But I'm not sure if there's a way around that or a way to, you know, provide that information for the public. Thank you.
one of the things that, because the schedule is very fluid and moves, it's difficult to say we can guarantee you till 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. It's very difficult that way. Maybe it's as much as a placard going up that says, "What a wonderful thing, we're open till 10 tonight," or something along that lines that's a positive message to people. We might be able to do that. Because it changes so frequently, though, I wouldn't want to muddy the waters with social media broadcasts that were open till 10 and whatever. I think it would start to lose some of its punch. But people could certainly call ahead as well and ask for our hours. But we could post them for the day ahead or something like that. We could do something.
Thank you, Mr. Newell, and through you, Mayor Kiesenberg. I just wondered, even could it be posted, as people are walking around, there's some nice signage there. If you knew the hours for the week coming up, could they be posted on the track there? Is that a possibility? So it's right
Yeah,
there.
I
The
think
people who are regular users would note, oh, this week, this is what I can do. Is that possible?
yeah, I'll certainly look at that with staff. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else with questions or first comments? Okay, so I have a resolution then that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth continues with the current walking track schedule at the Steve Kerr Memorial Complex. Moved by Councillor Johnston, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Andreessen. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. As item 9.2.2, the facilities team brings forward the results of a procurement tendering process properly implemented in accord with our bylaw and procedures relating to turf management at various locations throughout the municipality. And Mr. Newell, you're up again.
Great, thank you. We have just recently completed a tendering process for our turf management that looks after three different parcels of land or areas, being Wallace, Alma, and Listowel. We have in the past used Fletcher's Landscaping for a number of years. During the bidding process, they came in as the lowest bidder again for the next 3-year term. We use a combination of our staff cutting grass as well as contracted services, and it has been Fletcher's for the last number of years. As our community expands, the creation of maintenance of green space will be addressed with the approach of shared responsibilities. This could include the need for addition of staff positions or expansion of contracted services as we add more parks to our community. The cost is noticeably higher than what we had anticipated, but we have been working with a term extension for the last couple of years with Fletcher's. This is our first, since I've been here, our first tender for 3 years with a 2-year additional terms as well. So the cost is higher than what we had anticipated. However, it is noticeably less than what their competitors were that had been on the project. We will look to save in our contracted services and other purchases that we make moving forward. We have looked at the option of getting rid of some of the contracted services and in lieu of that using additional staff, additional equipment, and the cost is not at a point where it is feasible at this point. We have to realize that Fletcher's uses a team of people to look after our grass. So even if we were to add one full-time equivalent person, we still couldn't get all the grass cut in a timely fashion. And then the question is, what do you do in the off season when you don't have grass to cut? And so it's almost like you would need to hire a team of casual laborers for the course of the summer, and it's very difficult to do that as we see with summer student recruitment as well. And so the recommendation then is to award the contract for turf maintenance services to Fletcher's Landscaping based on a cost cut for locations, firm pricing for initial 3-year term, and then for from 2025 to 2027.
All right, thank you, Mr. Newell. Colleagues, questions, first comments? Okay, I'm not seeing any, so I have a resolution as follows. The Council of the Municipality of North Perth awards a request for tender NP-0001-25T turf maintenance services contract to Fletcher's Landscaping Inc. of Listowel, Ontario for quoted cost per cut by locations with firm pricing for an initial 3-year contract term from 2025 to 2027. Moved by Councillor Richardson, seconded by Councillor Duncan. Any discussion or debate? Councillor Johnston.
Just a comment on the parcel location. If you read it, it's scary to think there is 9 cemeteries on here of varying sizes, shapes, and ages. And I can tell you that Hammond Cemetery is not an easy one to get to in Elma Township. Like, you need a step ladder to pull the lawnmower up to it. Those old cemeteries cost us a lot of money to maintain.
Yeah. Yes, and further to that is transporting equipment to all those locations. You're looking at vehicles, trailers, and then the mowers themselves, right? Yeah.
Cemeteries are complicated, it would appear. All right, anyone else with questions or comments? Discussion or debate? We have this moved and seconded. Let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. And Mr. Newell still with us for item 9.2.3. The facilities team is requesting various road closures to support the implementation of a commemoration ceremony on February 28th, 2025 at the Memorial Arena Park 59. Over to you again.
It's rarely that I get excited about road closures, but I am very happy to make a request for the road closure for the commemoration event for map 59 on February 28th. The location we're looking at closing it provides access to people to be spectators and guests at the presentations that will take place that day. We're just basically trying to block off the area to the west of the entrance to the park, between that and the baseball diamonds at John Bell, as a gathering place for people. The timing will run from 9 to approximately 10:30, and we will then leave that site and head back to we'll open the roads and head back to the Legion for story times and conversation and social gathering as well. So we're just looking at a road closure from basically 8:30 till 10:30. So.
All right. Questions, comments? Councillor Blazek.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thank you, Jeff. Just because I happen to live in the area, I happen to know that there are a couple of buses that go right through there just after 9 a.m. So I don't know if that would mean we would want to wait until 9:15 to close the roads, or if we can ask the bus companies to defer their routes. But that could be a concern if we maybe don't talk to them in advance.
Thank you. And through you, we also have some people on our committee that are residents of that area who have notified us of that. And we've talked to the bus companies, so we're okay. They'll find a different location nearby. So.
Okay. You'll find the solution, is what you're saying.
Yes.
All right. That's good. Anyone else with questions or comments? I have a resolution then as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth directs staff to temporarily close Maitland Avenue and Palace Street at the entrance points plural of the Memorial Arena Park 59 on February 28th, 2025 from 8 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. Moved by Councillor Blazek, seconded by Councillor Rothwell. Discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you, Mr. Newell. Now we're going to entertain a report from the Corporate Services Department as item 9.3. In item 9.3.1, the deputy clerk and committee coordinator brings forward a draft of a new policy with process for adoption by council related to appointments to boards and committees, either instituted by or having representation on behalf of this council. The elements presented herein have been considered and supported by the council's governance committee. I call on Sarah Carter, our deputy clerk, to address the report and outline the key elements of the policy. Ms. Carter, please.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg, through you to members of council. Before you tonight is a proposed appointment to boards and committees policy. A little bit of backstory, the municipality currently doesn't have a written policy regarding appointments to our various boards and committees, while the municipality has currently been following a similar process to that of the proposed policy. The adoption of this written policy would ensure consistent, transparent, and equitable review of all applications and recommendations for appointment. So tonight we are seeking approval of the proposed policy, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, colleagues, questions or first comments? Councillor Blasek.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Todd, thank you, Sarah. I was asked by the Diversity, Equity, and Recruitment Committee to ask you tonight if you would consider modifying the recruitment, selection, and appointment section, which is 4.3A, to allow specifically for the DEI committee to have their chair or vice chair participate in the review team process along with the CAO, mayor, deputy mayor, and clerk prior to the enactment bylaws approval by council. The committee suggests that the chair or vice chair would best be able to provide input on the needs and how to fill any potential gaps of the committee, given the committee's very niche goals and mandates. You can find for your reference these goals and mandates on page 28 and 29 of the North Perth Board Committee Procedural Bylaw, which is on page 215 of this particular agenda. Thank you.
Staff comments?
Yep. Thank you, Councillor Blazek. So at this time, we're not recommending that the chair from any of our boards or committees participate in the review team. It is the responsibility of council to make the appointments to boards and committees, and as such, the mayor and deputy mayor would serve on that review team and make the recommendations to council as a whole to consider. I don't know if the CAO or clerk have anything else to add.
My only comment would be as well is that sometimes when we do this process, there is neither a chair or vice chair elected at the beginning of every term of council. All pre-existing chairs and vice chairs are no longer qualified to sit in their seat because they haven't been appointed by the new council. So I think the majority of the appointment process would happen when there is no chair or vice chair in this sitting. So that's one concern or flaw with that process.
Councillor Andreessen.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Kasenberg. I appreciate the comments provided through Ms. Blazek, through the DEI committee. I'm just wondering if the approach could also be that, as I see the list, the mayor, the deputy mayor, the CAO, the clerk, the staff liaison would have consideration around appointing people of diverse backgrounds to these committees, and have that kind of direction as they, move through the process of putting committees together. And I'd have to reread the policy, but I can't remember if that would be part of, if it's already part of the consideration at this time or not. But that perhaps could meet the needs of what the DEI committee is trying to reach. Thank you.
Councillor Blasek looks like she has a comment to make further.
Just in response to that, there is in the policy sort of an outline or guideline for what recruitment would be looking for. And also, during this discussion, the committee did take into consideration CAO Snell's comments about sometimes there just wouldn't be a chair or vice chair elected yet. Their request was that this council consider adding the chair or vice chair to this list for recruitment when there is already one. They are currently looking for new members, and the committee thought that it would be prudent for the chair or vice chair to be a part of this since they have experience in knowing where there are shortfalls in the current committee. Um, and and again, I'm just here on behest of a request of the committee asking that we consider that.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else with questions or comments? Councillor Richardson.
Thank you through you, Mary Kasenberg. As much as I can appreciate the comments that you brought forward from the committee, I certainly think as an overlying policy that sort of governs all of our boards and committees, sort of gives it a policy that I don't know if we obviously can't do something separate for a different one, but I totally understand and appreciate that. But as an overarching policy that sort of governs all appointments to all of the boards and committees of council, that I would say that as actually having a policy of one that didn't exist before is a good start for the time being. I think you could try and make little exceptions for every single board, and all of a sudden the appointment policy would be bigger than our budget. And I mean that most respectfully, but I certainly think for a starting with this would be a welcome addition. Um, but it covers all of the committees that we have, not doesn't necessarily single out just one, unfortunately for that situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Richardson. Councillor Johnson, you look like you have something to say.
I agree with Councillor Richardson's comments wholeheartedly, and I think it's the precedent we set. And I think not to speak downward of the DEI committee, but I think we need to put a bit of faith in our staff and in our elected officials, our leaders here, that they will, should they need guidance, will reach out and seek that guidance. And I think we need to put faith in those people. So I'd be in favor of leaving it the way it is. Thank you.
I weigh in too and kind of agree with the sentiment. I think that, I've been through this rodeo a couple times with Deputy Mayor Kellum, and I think we're very careful and considerate about the types of appointments that we make based on the applications that have been made. I think there's continuing work to be done by the organization with regards to mandates around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I suspect those will come. Right? It's we need, in my opinion, new lenses in a lot of the reports that come from staff, climate change lens, and diversity, equity, and inclusion lens, and there are others, right? And so, in the broad scope of things, moving forward with this policy, to me, at this point in time, makes a lot of sense. And where we need advice, this committee that's involved in the appointments, we would definitely seek it. To Councillor Johnson's comments. So, anyone else? Comments, questions? All right. We have a resolution. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Blazek. Sure.
Thank you again, Mayor Kissenberg. And just my final comment, not necessarily speaking on behalf of the DEI committee, but myself as a counselor, there is a provision in this policy C where an existing committee or board would like to make an endorsement. So it does allow that, and that had been explained to that committee. So I think that it's a very fair decision that we have all come to.
All right, let's consider the resolution as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth adopts policy 01-2025, appointments to boards and committees policy, dated January 27th, 2025. Can I call for a move? Councillor Richardson, thank you. Seconded by Deputy Mayor Kellum, thank you. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. Councillor Rothwell records a manual in favor vote, and with that, the motion is carried. Thank you, Ms. Carter. All right, next up, we have a report from the Strategic Initiatives Department. It's item 9.4. In item 9.4.1, North Perth's Economic Development Coordinator, Kim Couch, brings forward a report which invites extension of the implementation period of the downtown area community improvement plan until 2028. I think your title is actually Economic Development Officer, right? I just collapse. We'll get it right. Ms. Couch, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg and members of council. Bring forward to you tonight the request to extend the implementation period for the downtown area's community improvement plan. That the original CIP was created, was developed and approved by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing and North Perth Council in 2012. The community improvement plan is part one of the downtown revitalization and beautification strategy. That also includes part two, which is the streetscape designs. The downtown area CIP sets out a long-term strategic and coordinated framework for municipal actions, including potential municipal leadership programs, infrastructure projects, and financial incentives, all with the goal of revitalization of our downtowns and redevelopment of the downtowns within Atwood, Moncton, and Listowel. And also to provide an opportunity to engage private landowners in these different programs and enhancements. A number of projects have been implemented within the Streetscape and Municipal Leadership Program, portions of the Downtown Revitalization Strategy. Currently, the Facade Improvement Program is the primary financial incentive program used under the CIP. So most changes to the CIP would require an amendment at the provincial level. The CIP itself does offer the opportunity to extend the time frame implementation period for the CIP and gives that authority to council to make that extension. So we are requesting an extension so that we can continue to offer the financial grant of the facade improvement program as is already approved under the 2025 budget. And we're asking for it to be extended to the beginning of 2028 so that we can do a full review of the CIP in 2027. And open for any questions. And there is no financial implication at this time to the extension.
All right, thank you, Ms. Couch. Colleagues, questions, first comments on this? Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd, and thanks for the reports, Kim. When is the actual date that this is supposed to run out? Like there were.
It was 22.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
There are sometimes questions you should not ask. Anyone else with the question that should be asked? All right, seeing none, let's have a look at the resolution that's before us. That the Council of the Municipality of North Perth approves the extension of the implementation period of the North Perth Downtown Areas Community Improvement Plan to January 31st, 2028. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Rothwell, thank you. Councillor Andreessen is our seconder. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Couch. I think I'll use my discretion to pull a 5-minute bio break at this point. CEO Snell, just as you're getting up, I'm going to tell you to sit down so that we'll come back at, let's say, 8:45 for the sake of argument. All right, looks like I have everybody at the table. Well, enjoying various conversations, but we're back now, and next up we have a report from the CAO's department. This one's kind of community shaping, folks. So we do have an interesting opportunity tonight to learn about that. As this item, the CAO brings forward a conceptual plan for the development of lands in the west of the municipality, surrounding the Steve Kerr Memorial Complex and the Westfield Spinrite Daycare institutions. The development of these lands is certainly something that's been on my mind since day one of my mayorship. Will significantly contribute to a more complete community as North Perth builds towards cityhood. So, without further delay, CAO Snell, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. So, as the mayor's talked about and during Maura's previous discussion, this is a parcel of land that's been owned by the municipality for some time since the school and the Steve Kerr were built west on Binney Street. We have been eagerly awaiting the County of Perth official plan approval. We could have proceeded on our own, as suggested by the mayor. We would have had to done our own, some of our own growth updates. So that was one thing that did were required because it was an urban boundary settlement expansion. And interestingly enough, when I think back to 2019, I'm not sure we would have got it right in 2019 either. So sometimes having to wait has maybe proved to provide some more insight and hopefully good answers for our community going forward. The plan does include a dedicated space for the here Perth Agricultural Science Center. I know they have a new name, but that was, at the time of the report, that was still the name being used. As well as residential. And in recent conversations with the OPP, they are looking for an updated facility, and it does include a new location for a new OPP office. The land also does contemplate what the community will look like 10, 20 years down the line, and has set aside hopefully enough institutional space in this plan to accommodate the future public uses that may be required in North Perth going forward. Again, I don't have a crystal ball, but this is certainly staff's best attempt to establish and set up enough space for the public institutional uses that will be required in the future. The big change, especially from members of the side on the council for quite some time, is we have moved the cemetery from facing Gun Club Side Road further east. And the main reason for that, going back, originally when we allocated the land for the cemetery, we actually allocated 40 acres. With cemetery trends changing drastically, we no longer need 40 acres. We're still using the current cemetery, Fairview, far longer than we ever would have imagined, even 10, 15 years ago. And the idea of moving it east is the cemetery is one public facility or institution that does not require municipal servicing. And although we haven't done enough engineering, it will be really hard to bring services to that property, especially north of the stormwater management feature that's already there, because of elevations. That is the low spot on the property. So certainly, if council approves this concept, we will need to continue working towards more engineering work, as well as putting together a more draft subdivision application ready for approval. We can work at this while we're waiting for the county to have our official plan approved, and I'm certainly working with Planner Davidson on our comprehensive zoning bylaw requirements to go ahead with zoning on this land. I'm certainly willing to answer any questions, and like I said, this is not set in stone, and we can certainly fine tune it as we work with our planners and engineers.
Okay, colleagues. So it's certainly interesting to sort of get a first glimpse at the future here in these lands. I think we should be sort of respectful. We're at the earliest stages of understanding thematically what could be there. There are some things that we haven't put words on at this point, and that we probably should avoid putting too many words on in some cases. I think it's fair to say that there are some potential uses that could be allocated there that depend on other organizations and institutions, and it's not our story to tell. So we should be mindful of that if you're following what I'm saying in terms of asking two pointed questions on some of that. But with that, I'd invite respectful questions and comments, even a few suggestions if you feel suggestions are needed. But I'm not considering this a brainstorming session. I'm still considering this a first look at a thematic plan where we can offer a little bit more direction if we feel we need to. With those preface comments, Councillor Andreessen, you're first.
Thank you through you, Mayor Kasenberg. And thank you to Mr. Snell for providing this to us. I just have a question around the positioning of the residential area of 8.64 hectares and the future institutional use of 5.84. I'm wondering if that could be flipped at all. The reason being, um, the Agricultural Science Center might be better positioned with a future institutional use beside it. And also, the residential area would back onto that passive recreational area, which would be a benefit for those in that residential area. Just a thought as I looked at this, and I don't know how far ahead you are with this, but just wondered if I could provide that suggestion. Thanks.
CEO Snow, are there any physical impediments that suggest against a strategy of considering the possibility of flipping those two blocks?
I don't think so. That's to me as possible. It's something we can take a look at.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else with questions or first comments? Councillor Nordum.
Thanks. Through you, Mayor Kasenberg. Just curious, those two future public works, are they an either or kind of situation, or is it two separate ones for, say, water and one for public works or whatever?
That's part of the plan that hasn't been certainly defined yet. So it's probably probably a combination of one would more or less being a public works office or administrative center with some housing of equipment, and the other one being more of an outdoor storage area. Some of the stuff you see down at the current gardens in town. We also, in the long term, we don't own our own salt dome, so that's also something that's going to have to be looked at in sometime in the future. I recognize that sort of the very north end needs some still sort of hashing out. I haven't had a really in-depth conversation yet with certainly Matt since he's joined our team, but hopefully he can shed some light on this as we certainly get into future plans.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else with questions or comments at this point? Councillor Richardson and then Councillor Johnston.
Yep. Thank you. Through you, Mayor Kasenberg, and I totally understand that this is incredibly high level and just for a look, but just my 2 cents. I'm sure it might have been overheard before, but if the science center goes through to and become to fruition as what they say is going to be, I would think that that could almost be, I shouldn't say anywhere, but it could possibly be changed on that road because it's going to be a significant destination. It's not going to be a drive by and just pop in type of place. And I would think that that would be, pardon me, that I'm almost also thinking of proximity to serviceability, that the depending on what goes there for the future institutional for 5.84 and the OPP station possibly come closer to the front. I agree with Councillor Andreessen's moving the residential possibly back a little bit to back onto that passive recreation. But I would just think for serviceability, for especially the OPP station, and given some of the significant winter weather that we've been having, that's obviously today. This is the future, but given winter is probably going to continue into the future, for depending on what's going to be going in and out of the OPP station to be able to maintain serviceability and proximity to all the residents of the community. So just my 2 cents. I understand it's very preliminary and high level, but my 2 cents.
Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Mayor. I think this is an exciting glimpse into the future. That it's something we can look forward to. And yes, the blocks may move a little bit here and there, whatever. But I think this is an exciting step forward for our municipality.
I agree with you strongly, and I think there to Councillor Richardson's comments about the Ag Science Center. I think they actually wanted frontage on 86, so the fact that we've already pushed them back one block and sort of off the highway, to them is I believe, and I can't speak with authority in their case, but they certainly have concerns that it could deter visits and tourists and all that kind of stuff, right? So to continue to push it north is something that I'm pretty sure they would have words for. But I hear your point. I'm just pointing out that they may well find that increasing undesirable circumstance, and we'll hear about it in due course. But one of the things that impresses me about this plan, and it's something that CEO Snell and I have talked about a few times over the years, is that wonderful trail space and green space that's lodged in there. I can honestly own that I like going up to Wingham and walking around the trail system in Wingham. It's a lovely trail system and well done. And it's something that I've aspired to. It's like Northbridge should have something as good as that, right? And we do have wonderful trails, but the setting of the Wingham Trail is pretty spectacular, and I think we can achieve something like that here, which is why I'm excited to see that there's that little green space that CEOs now and the team have put in there for us as a future opportunity for recreational space that's a little bit different than the conventional trail system, and that provides encounters with nature. CEOs now.
And certainly, it is very preliminary. Just to add, one thing about the Ag Science Center location too is also just the proximity to Steve Kerr. There have been talks of potential like trade shows, and so having proximity to the Steve Kerr, we could benefit from using both those properties, benefiting from each other, and also one of the things that was talked about early on of the Ag Science Center, we're still a long way from that also, but is the potential attraction of a hotel to our community. And having those two facilities in close proximity to each other, I think would be beneficial if a hotel was to ever come close to these sites. So that's part of the reasoning, but we can always move.
Thank you for that. That's helpful too. Anyone else with comments or questions? All right. Knowing that we're not locking anything into stone here, I think that it looks like staff wishes to proceed with some planning application process, or do you want to amend this resolution?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think that the resolution gives us just that sort of go ahead, the council's approval of the conceptual. But we will basically be proceeding with basically what we've been preparing for a submission for a planning application for a subdivision approval. But there'll be steps along the way that we'll have to get there.
Okay. You'll be checking in with council from time to time on the various stages and decisions that do get made with regards to the block orders.
Yes,
For sure. Okay, colleagues, understand where we're going with that? Okay, so resolution that's being proposed to us that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth receives the conceptual plans for the West Development Plan as presented, and that council authorizes staff to proceed with the planning application process as per the conceptual plans dated November 28th, 2024. That's the right date we want on this? Okay, thank you. Moved by Councillor Richardson, seconded by Councillor Johnston. Thank you. Discussion or debate? And of course, I think it goes without saying staff will continue to look at some of the suggestions that have been made around the table tonight for locked location. And there's some flexibility there. With that, let's have that vote.
I'm in favor. It's a vote of progress. Sorry.
Okay, Councillor Anstett records a manual in favor vote, and with that, that is carried. Thank you, CAO Snell, for your work and the team's work on this one. That brings us to item 10. Does any member of council wish to ask for a report from staff or from a committee? Not seeing any hands waving at me on that one. Let's move to item 11. We have received no additional items of correspondence for council's disposition beyond that addressed in our consent agenda this evening. At this point, we turn to consideration of bylaws that have been recommended to us for action. Tonight, we have 10 bylaws for our consideration. The enabling resolution outlines for each bylaw their number and purpose. Before I read the resolution for passing these bylaws, which is an omnibus resolution, does any councillor wish to extract one or more of them for a more fulsome consideration or an individual or recorded vote? Clerk Klein is raising her hand, please.
Through you, Mayor. Just thanks to Councillor Duncan for catching this, but just on bylaw 16-2025, the appointment bylaw for the new building inspector, there's just an administrative error with clause 3, so I would just ask that we approve that bylaw as amended just to remove clause 3. It's not needed in the
The
bylaw.
whole thing. It's still part of the omnibus action. All right, that's fine. All right, I have the resolution then, unless any of you want to extract any of these. So let's go. The following bylaws are hereby passed. 7-2025 being a bylaw to assume the services for the Lone Oak Danbrook subdivision, McCourt Place. 8-2025 being a bylaw to authorize the use of vote tabulators for the 2026 municipal election. 9-2025 being a bylaw to authorize the signing of a boundary road renewal agreement with the municipality of Perth East. 10-2025 being a bylaw to adopt a board and committee procedure bylaw. 11-2025 being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 6-ZB-1999 as amended. 15-2025 being a bylaw to repeal bylaw number 34-2017. 16-2025 being a bylaw to appoint a building inspector, zoning administrator, bylaw enforcement officer, property standards officers, plumbing inspector, and sewage system inspector as amended. 17-2025 being a bylaw to authorize the signing of an extension agreement with FAB Broadcasting, Inc. 18-2025 being a bylaw to assume the services for Wellington Estates Phase 3. And that bylaw 73-2024 being a bylaw to provide for a drainage works in the municipality of North Perth be read a third time and be finally passed. Can I call for a mover? Councillor Duncan, thank you. Councillor Anstett as our seconder. Any discussion or debate? It's a thick package tonight. Look at that. Lots of paper in this one. All right. Seeing no hands waving at me, let's have that vote.
I'm in favor.
And Councillor Anstett cast a manual vote, which brings us to 10 votes counted for. That is carried. Thank you. That brings us next to item 13 on our agenda. As item 13.1, does any councillor wish leave to give notice of motion for our next meeting? Not seeing any expression of interest there. We are now at item 14 on our agenda. For item 14, are there any announcements that would be of benefit to our community or that reflect well on North Perth at this time? Those in the chamber may raise their hands to be placed on the speaker's list if you have something to say about this matter. Colleagues, I will advise that there is a registered team for coldest night of the year on behalf of the municipality of North Perth, and I'd love to have you join us for the walk on February 22nd if you can bring yourself to support that activity. More information is online at cnoy.org. All right, we have one item to be considered in a closed session meeting of council. I will now read the resolution that explains and enables our action as follows. The council proceeds in camera at 9:06 p.m. to address a matter pertaining to the following: litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board regarding the Soden drain. Can I call for a mover on this one? Councillor Nordholm, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Johnston. I saw that head nod. Any discussion or debate on this? Seeing none, let's have that vote. Councillor Anstett records a manual vote in favor, and that is carried. Colleagues, that means we're going to enter our in-camera session. Those in the chamber who are not supposed to be here should exit at this time, and we will reconfigure the audio-visual system in the room for the purposes of a closed session. The doors to the chamber will also be closed at this hour.
Just going to wait for audio.
All right. Regarding item 16 on our agenda, Council will discuss the matter that was identified in our enabling resolution for a closed session meeting of Council. No further staff direction pertaining to the matter was given. The matter will remain confidential at this time for the reasons stipulated in our enablement of closed session. Council has a mandated good practice act near the end of its meeting agenda to confirm all of its actions and business of its meeting through what is called the confirmatory bylaw. I will now read a copy of that, the enablement resolution, as follows: that bylaw 14-2025 being a bylaw to confirm generally previous actions of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth is hereby passed. Can I call for a mover? Moved by Councillor Richardson, seconded by Councillor Rothwell. He's nodding his head vaguely. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. Councillor Nordham records a manual in favor vote. With that, we have 10 accounted for, and that is carried. And we've come to the magic moment. Councillors, we have completed deliberation, taken action on the business that came before us tonight. It is appropriate thus for us to consider adjournment. I have a resolution to that effect as follows: that the council meeting adjourns at 9:17 p.m. to meet again for general council business on Monday, February 24th, 2025 at 7 p.m. Moved by Councillor Johnston, seconded by Councillor Blazik. Thank you. Not debatable. Let's have that vote. Councillor Norham records a manual in favor vote. And with that, that is carried. Colleagues, this meeting is adjourned. Our next council meeting is Monday, February 24th.